DPAC was basically set up following disabled people's protest at the Tory Party conference in Birmingham in 2010. Because following on from the June 2010 budget, it was obvious that disabled people were going to be really badly impacted by the austerity cuts that George Osborne was planning to introduce. It was originally intended just to have a disabled people section and a march there, but at the same time we realised that there was no functioning national DPO to campaign against the cuts, and somehow DPAC just sort of emerged to fill that gap. And from the original meeting of 6 or 7 co-founders in Birmingham, things just took off, and it was really difficult to know what to focus on because, frankly, there were so many cuts that disabled people were facing at that time. I think we've achieved quite a lot, particularly given how small we are, say, compared to one of the major disability charities. We don't have the massive amounts of funding. We don't have the massive numbers of staff. We do have a research team, which is very useful. We work very closely with John from Disability News Service, which is also very useful. And I think we've had a lot of success. I think initially, when we targeted at us, we brought down their share prices and targeted their recruitment campaigns, including on university campuses. And we basically forced them to give up the work capability assessments contracts. We targeted Ian Duncan Smith, and we helped unseat Esther McVeigh in a Wirral seat, because she really wasn't a particularly helpful minister, and she was particularly nasty. I think we were responsible for bringing the UN to the UK to carry out the first inquiry into any country using the optional protocol in the UN CRPD. We've raised awareness of the attacks and cuts that disabled people face on their lives, both through lobbying, campaigning, and I think in particular through direct actions, which I find are particularly empowering for people who may normally not have a lot of say over their lives. We've stormed Parliament twice. We attempted to occupy the grounds of Westminster Abbey. Looking at the pictures, I still can't believe how many police were involved in stopping a few disabled people camping there, but apparently it belonged to the Queen, so we couldn't go there. I think we've worked successfully with all sorts of groups. And I mean, in the last couple of months, we've actually been inundated with emails from people wanting to work with us and do joint work. And we've also worked really hard to educate non-disabled groups that we work with on meeting access needs, being inclusive, and sort of on our issues, and got them to include things that affect disabled people in a lot of their campaigning.
That sounds an awful lot, so that's very good. Now tell us, looking forward, we seem to be going into another period of austerity, or just a continuation of the austerity that has already cut the whole infrastructure to pieces. Why do you think we need to go on fighting now?
My personal view is things are just getting worse. I mean, disabled people really can't cut back anymore. They've already cut back and cut back for the past 12 years. There's just nothing left to cut. I'm really worried about the levels of malnutrition that people face, and how the levels of malnutrition have increased massively. Access to healthcare has got much worse. Social care is in crisis, and incomes really are just totally inadequate, and all of that is before the cost of living crisis sort of kicks in. I think it's really important we have to keep fighting back, because I honestly believe that it will result in massive numbers of deaths if we don't try and stop these attacks and get the government to commit to doing something to provide some sort of social tariff for fuel for disabled people.
So what are the key things that we should be championing? Obviously, we want to stop the cuts, but we need more than that. We need a secure environment for disabled people to live their lives as other people do, you know. So how are we going to, what are we going to argue for that, to demand for that?
Well, I think the one thing obviously that has to be in place is sufficient, affordable and accessible housing, because if you don't have somewhere safe and affordable to live, it's really difficult to live independently. So housing, I think, is a major issue. Disabled facilities grants are a major issue, and I think we need a national social care system which is free at the point of need, funded through general taxation, and which is organised nationally but delivered locally.
And what about the things like the UN Convention? Do you think we should do more on that in this country?
Ideally, I would like to see the whole of the UN Convention adopted into domestic law, which I think would give us far more protection than we have at the moment. But I think coupled with that, we also need better access to justice, because it's, even if you can get legal aid and you have a really good case, it's quite often impossible to find a public law solicitor who isn't inundated with other work. So I think the appeal system that should have been in the Care Act is something else that needs to be implemented.
So thank you very much, Linda. That's given us a real insight into a campaign that has really championed and I think saved many lives of people at the sharp end, because you've given them hope and a collective fight back. So thank you very much.